Okay, we're back. Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Yes.
Okay. I figured that's what would happen is we would be, sometimes it just happens when we have a bad connection, and down here I had a problem with getting the connection for the internet. So we should be okay now. Let's see, we got Lillian, Delicia, Parker, Rhett, Kamisha, Morgan, Chanel, Delancey. Can you all hear me pretty clear now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see if we can get everybody back popping in. They should be coming in as we move through this. Okay. All right. Now, take a little bit of time. I did get your assignments for doing the reflections on the working and learning conditions survey for your school. I should have those done by the weekend. So you will get those back. Now, this next one, I want to take just a couple of minutes and talk to you about it. Now, it looks like the same assignment, but let me explain the difference. Okay. One of the things about it is I want you to get used to looking at the data in the school and then looking at the data in the district where the school is located. Because part of this connecting to leadership is, leaders have an ability to pick out things that maybe need to be improved. It's kind of funny. There's a leadership coach who's been very popular in the past 25 years named Ken Blanchard. And one of the things that he's real big on is he makes the comment over and over again, it's the job of leaders in an organization to figure out what doesn't work. Okay. Now, as well as I do, sometimes, everything's in good shape in the school or everything's in good shape in an organization, and there's really no problems right now. But one of the things that good leaders do is good leaders are always anticipating what might need to be done later. I mean, for example, you guys who are in schools right now, you guys know that we're going back to school August 17th. In some way, shape, or form, we're going back to school. So you all had the luxury of being able to find out last year what doesn't work in a digital format, right? So how's that going to make your instruction if you have to do it digitally this year? How's that going to make your instruction different? How are you going to approach that as opposed to how you might have approached it before?
Well, for me, I teach music. I'm a music teacher, so all my stuff is hands-on. Like, I want them to be able to touch the piano and the instruments, and I got the music books. I want them to be able to sing back to me and stuff like that. So for me, it's going to be kind of hard to do just the remotely way because they won't get the hands-on teaching like I did when I was a kid.
Well, and I can see where you would have that issue because with hands-on, and particularly in a music class, where do you teach, Lillian?
Broad Primary School.
Okay, so you're over in Wayne County, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so and think about all the things that you have to contend with as a teacher leader that you're going to have to think about totally different. There won't be a music program at the PTO meeting or Title I night or the Christmas program. There won't be, no Veterans Day program.
No,
I got a funny feeling a lot of the things we do in a lot of our programs are going to be much different. So, as a teacher leader, you're probably going to have to step out on a limb and maybe teach from a whole different perspective than you ever thought you'd have to teach from. And, and that's really all of us. The blessing of this is that we're all going to learn how to teach things much differently. Yeah. That's the blessing. The curse is that until this thing is lifted, our students are not going to get the best of what we've got on an everyday basis because of the fact that, we're going to be worrying about us. We're going to be worried about them. Their parents are going to be worrying about them. Going to be a lot of things going on. So it's going to be an interesting time. But, this is also a great opportunity for people to develop leadership skills because you're going to be really spending a lot more time providing instruction, maybe without the benefit of, coaches or or administrators close by all the time because they can't be everywhere all the time. But that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership tonight, but I will say this, going back to the assignment that's due Sunday night, the assignment that's due Sunday night is you're going to be looking at the district in the same way you looked at the school. Okay. Now, the reason why I tell you this is because I think it's really important for people, particularly if they're out looking for schools, whether they're looking for them for their kids, whether they're looking for them to work there or whatever. I am a firm believer that you find a place where you are a good fit, okay? And it's a good fit for you. And one of the things that I tell people all the time is don't just jump at the very first job someone gives you. It may not be the best fit for you. You may need to go to another place where your skills complement what's going on there, because I do believe that's one of the things that really causes teacher dissatisfaction. If your skills don't complement where you're going, then you're not going to be real happy, and that's one of the things I think is really important, because this profession is a profession where if you don't feel satisfied in the profession, you're not going to be effective. And I think that's one of the things people don't look at and talk about a whole lot. But we're going to talk a little bit tonight about leadership and about professionalism. Before we go any further, let me ask you something real quick. How many of you are members of at least one professional organization connected to your job? Okay. Rhett, what program are you a member of?
Well, I'm a basketball coach also. It's the NCCA. It's kind of the North Carolina High School Basketball Coaches Association. Yeah.
And so you're probably not liking the fact that this year they didn't have their big conference in Greensboro this year.
Well, it's all virtual, but, this is my first year teaching. So kind of going back to what you were talking about, figuring out the classroom this year, I don't know what normal is. So this year is going to be normal to me. So it'll be interesting when we actually do get back to everyone else's normal. That'll be a change for me, and maybe it'll be a little easier. But, here in a few weeks, this is going to be my normal. It's all I know. So I don't know any better,
All right. Well, the one thing I'll tell you is that you're making a good statement there, that you don't know what you don't know. And that's one of the things about it. Right now, it's going to be a learning process. And for some of y'all, it's going to be a learning process, not only this year, but next year as well. But let me just say this when we talk about leadership and talk about leadership in the classroom. How many of you have seen the teacher evaluation instrument they use in North Carolina? How many of you have been evaluated on it? Anybody? Can anybody tell me about Standard 1 on the North Carolina teacher evaluation instrument?
Standard 1 is.
Morgan, you're getting ready to say something.
I'm thinking.
Standard 1 on the teacher evaluation instrument. What area are they looking at as a teacher? Okay, I'm gonna give you a hint. What are we studying in this class?
Professionalism.
Leadership.
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 And there are 5 criteria in that one standard. There's leadership in the classroom, leadership in the school, leadership in the profession, ethics, and then you have the final one. Where teachers are looking at the larger teachers lead in the, oh gosh, what is it? Because you have classroom, school, profession, ethics, and then now I've drawn a blank. It's been one of those nights. As far as that's concerned, hold on, let me get it here. teacher leadership profession, advocates for schools and students. That's the last one, is they advocate for schools and students. Okay, so when you think about those 5 areas, that's what you do in the classroom. That's what teachers do. So leadership is a real key component. And we're going to take a little bit of time talking about professionalism tonight. Some of you all have been members of groups. How many of you are members of the NCAE, or you're members of the American Federation of Teachers, or PENCE? Anybody a member of PENCE? Professional Educators of North Carolina? Okay, the reason why I bring these organizations up is that when we talk about the professional aspects of classroom leadership, one of the things I think is really interesting is that when you're leading in the profession, you're keeping abreast of what's going on professionally. I'll tell you, this is one of the things I used to always laugh about as a principal. Every school I ever went to as an administrator, you always had that one teacher who had been there since God was a little boy. She had been there forever. And she informed you of how many principals she had lasted out, how many assistant principals she had outlasted, and she was going to be there when you were gone. You always had one like that. And most of the time, that teacher taught her first year or his first year and then repeated it 29 more times and wouldn't change anything, wouldn't improve anything, wouldn't do any professional development, or if they were made to go to a meeting, they'd sit right there and do busy work. You seen those people in staff meetings before? That teacher sitting there grading that pile of papers just as fast as she can go so she don't have to take it home. Okay, and missing every part of the meeting. And then would turn around 2 days later and do something that they were told not to do in the meeting. Anybody meet those people? Okay. I'll tell you this, and I'm just speaking from the point of view of a former principal. That is every principal's cross to bear. And they have to bear that cross all year long and sometimes multiple years. And the reason why I say that, and I'm not saying that in a bad way because most of these people are good people, but the mindset when we talk about how we train teachers and what we expect professionally from teachers, the mindset has changed. Nobody ever questioned what you did in your classroom before in the past. You went in your room, you shut your door, you did what you did, and you came out in June. And if the kids had done what they were supposed to do, they went on to the next grade. And then you'd find out from the next teacher whether or not you did your job or not. It's kind of the way it worked. Whereas now we're really into this continuous model where we're training all the time and we're improving our skills and we're improving what we're all about. And leadership is a big piece. Like I told y'all last week, we haven't talked about leadership like we talk about it now. I mean, leadership is something, the first time I ever heard the term teacher leadership was in summer school in 1999 when I was working on an administrative degree at East Carolina University. Okay? We never talked about teacher leadership. We had this teacher evaluation instrument we used to use in North Carolina called the TPAI. And if your classroom was clean and your kids were sitting there quietly when the principal came in, it was a little checklist. If they were quiet and the classroom was clean, you could get a good evaluation. And there wasn't much to it. That we weren't looking a whole lot about the pedagogy, about you teaching and about what you were doing with your kids and you engaging your kids in the things that we expect. We weren't looking at that, okay? It was kind of like a factory. Kids filed in, they sat down, they did the worksheets, they did the book stuff, and then they went out the door. Whereas we started thinking about, well, are we really teaching them how to do anything? And then we had to stop and think about it. So this is where leadership came in. And we're going to talk a little bit about leadership tonight in a different context. Let me ask you something real quick. How many of you love to have the leader that comes right in, the principal, assistant principal, grade chair, whatever, who comes right in and says, all right, we're going to do this. This is how it's going to be done. We're going to go on this field trip this year. It's going to cost this much. We're going to line it all up. You're going to collect this money. It's going to be due by tomorrow. It's going to be in, and we're going to, do this. This is how we're going to eat lunch. We aren't going to McDonald's. Everybody's going to pack a lunch. It's just very rigid. This is how it is. Boom, 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 boom. Anybody work with anybody like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about those people. Do you like working with them?
No.
Sometimes.
Okay, well, Kamisha said no, and Morgan said
Oh.
sometimes. Can
Sometimes.
y'all clarify that a little bit?
It just depends, because you want that leader. You want that leader to step up and show you the way, but at the same time, you don't want a bossy boss, that don't really know how to explain it well to you, where they can break it down to the point you can be like, okay, I understand that, instead of quickly like, okay, you gotta get on and get it. You know what I mean?
And they're not valuing your opinion on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think it
Kamisha, you brought up a
depends on the
good point.
situation.
It's like it's their way or no way. It's like, I'm like, okay.
Okay, you brought up a good point there. That's something to talk about, being able to have some input. Morgan, what were you going to say?
I think it depends on the situation. Certain things, I just rather them take charge and just go ahead and state what it's going to be, because sometimes I don't want to hear everybody else's opinion, because now we got all this chaos. And then sometimes, I want them to ask, what do we think? I think it just depends on what the situation is. I think that balance is nice, though, and knowing when to be this way or when to be that way.
Okay, so you both mentioned some good things about it, is that being able to have an opinion, but also being able to have balance. Hey, let me ask you a question. Let's think about ourselves here a little bit. How many of you coach a little league team, or teach a Sunday school class, or you are, a club president, or you're president of a sorority or whatever? How many of you find yourselves in roles of leadership outside of your school? Okay. Now, in your role, Kamisha, I'm going to pick on you for just a second here. Okay, I'm not going to be mean, but I'm just going to pick on you for a minute. Okay, in your role, what leadership role do you have outside of your schoolwork?
The youth. I'm over the youth at church.
Okay, so in other words, you got 50 teenagers losing their minds, and you got to keep them under control.
Yes.
Okay, all right, bless you. Anyway, but all things considered, let me ask you this: how do you work with those kids? Tell me about your approach with those kids.
Well, I try to think more on their level, see what keeps them active as far as me dealing with them for as Christ. Like instead of me just giving them reading in the Bible script stuff, I might do it like, we might do it like in a play, or we might, act it out, something like that. Something just keep them active, keep them interested.
Okay, so you try to connect to those
Their level.
kids. Okay, how many of you ever have worked in an organization with adults? Say, you're in a social group, or a sorority, or even you sit on the board at your church or something like that. What's that like when you work with adults?
Strong opinions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well,
Strong.
I'm on the leadership. I'm on the leadership team at my church. They're dealing with the adults. It's just, man, I get frustrated real easy with them.
Well, the one thing I will tell you is this: everybody always has to think about how they work with other people. Whether it's in the school, you think about it. You have 28 children in the course of a school day in a classroom full of middle school kids. You have 28 kids, or you have you're in a high school and you have 3 classes of 30 plus kids, and they all have different opinions. They all have different personalities. They all have different sets of parents. You name it. They've all been raised in a different way before they got to your class, and you got to figure out a way to work with them. And every year you have to start from scratch and figure out a way to work with them. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're going to talk about a guy named Kurt Lewin. okay, tonight.
Mhm.
Kurt Lewin was one of the first people to study leadership, and he started doing it, toward the end of the Second World War and in the 1950s. And you think about it, traditionally we thought about our leaders were always military people. You think about it, they were military people, and then you got into communities and you started realizing that there were leaders, whether they were civic leaders, whether they were church leaders. A lot of ministers have a lot of connections and a lot of pull in communities. Okay, they might have been, in some places, school principals. In
Yeah.
small rural areas, school principals carried a whole lot of weight. It's a very interesting book I read a couple of weeks ago. A friend of mine suggested it to me, and I read it. A book written by a guy named Ernest Gaines. It's called A Lesson Before Dying, and the character in the book has been given the task by this young man's grandmother, because the young man's committed a crime. He's going to, it's set in the 40s. He's going to go to prison, and he's going to get the electric chair. And he's been given the task of this boy's grandmother to teach him how to be a man, so he will meet this like a man and not like a little boy. And kid's about 16 years old. And it's a really interesting book because it kind of lays out a lot of things about leadership. And I found it very interesting because of the fact that here was this school teacher / principal who has been given the responsibility of doing a job that no teacher ever wants to do, basically preparing somebody how to die. And and then it was a very, I had a rough time finishing the book, but it was a very touching thing, because when you think about it from a leadership standpoint, as leaders in classrooms, we have the obligation and the opportunity to prepare our students to be leaders as they get older. And if we don't perpetuate leadership, then we don't build better societies. We don't build better learning processes, and the kids don't ever get where they could go. And that's the big thing. Can we take them where they can go? And that's the big issue about leadership in the classroom. But back on Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin had 3 areas of leadership, and I'll send these out to you. Okay. Kurt Lewin had what he called autocratic leadership, and Kamisha, you kind of pointed out what autocratic leadership was. It's my way or the highway. And, and that's the way it's going to be. That's autocratic leadership. There's not going to be any wiggle room. It's going to be one way and one way only. My dad, and I always think about family vacations. My dad was the highway autocrat. When you went on vacation with Dad, you did not stop to go to the bathroom until the needle on the car said he, or he had to stop. When you pulled up at the drive-through window at McDonald's, everybody got the same thing. There weren't any special orders. Okay? And that was very autocratic. It wasn't, well, would you like to have a hamburger or a cheeseburger or a filet of fish or whatever? Pulled up to the window. I have 5 cheeseburgers, 5 orders of fries, 5 Cokes. Here we go. We don't have time to stop, and hope you don't have to go to the bathroom. And that was autocratic, because it was going to, Dad's thing was get in the car, make time where you were going, and get there. Okay, that's autocratic. Now that's great in a lot of ways. Now when you got little kids and stuff, and they're in the back seat of the car, you can drive for a long time with a little kid fussing in your ear. You really can. But when those kids get older, and all of a sudden there's not room to separate them all in the back seat, that's when it gets tough. Okay. Then we switch to the second part of Lewin's theories on leadership. Okay. Democratic leadership. Now, let's talk about democratic leadership in our car trip going on vacation with Dad. it would be a little bit more like this, okay? They start driving after about an hour. You know, we probably ought to eat lunch. What would you all like for lunch? And somebody says, I want McDonald's. Someone says, I want Burger King. You know, the kid who makes a mess in the car says, I want Taco Bell. Because you can't eat a taco driving a car without making a mess. You know that. You know, and so you kind of come to an agreement. And usually mom was the tiebreaker, you know. Mom was the tiebreaker on that one. But the point is, you got input before you decided on what you were going to eat. You didn't have to wait till you got to the gas needle being E on empty to decide you needed to stop. And, you know, and you might even ask the question, you know, if we're taking a Democratic car trip, do you guys want to park the car and go inside and sit down so we can use the restroom after we eat? Or do you just want to drive on? Is everybody okay? You know, you'd ask questions, you'd get input, okay? Now, you and I both know that Dad liked to do the autocratic thing because Dad was going to make that time. We weren't going to spend a lot of time on the road if we could help it. Okay. Now, as we got older, I became the father of a daughter, and he ain't taking no autocratic trips. I can tell you that much right now. We haven't taken one ever. And so, but long story short, the third type is this, and you guys have probably worked with these type of leaders before. It's called laissez-faire, okay? Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. If we're in the car, well, we'll leave when we wake up. When we get ready to leave, we'll leave, you know. Whereas autocratic Dad was on the road at 5:30 in the morning. Laissez-faire Dad's on the road at 10:45. And usually 45 minutes down the road, you know, Dad, can we stop and get something to drink? Yeah, all right, whatever, you know. Dad, can we get some gas? Can we get a snack? Yeah, whatever, do whatever you want to do, you know. And what ends up happening is it's like 11:30 at night, you're still on the road when you could have been where you were going hours ago, but nobody put any initiative into getting where they were going to be. Now, if you think about all three of those styles, autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire, like I said, if you don't remember anything from Dr. Gainey except for car trips with his dad, I mean, you'll have the three major components of Lewin's leadership theories, okay? But when you think about those three aspects, we've all worked for leaderships for leadership teams and leaders in schools or in jobs we've had that identify usually with one of those or a combination of more than one of those. Let me ask you a question about your own classroom. How many of you go in there and you drop the hammer on the first day? What's the first day like in your classroom? Y'all tell me some stories about your first day.
Stressful, chaos. You dealing
Okay,
with kindergarten.
what's so stressful about it, Kamisha?
I'm trying to get these kindergartners to understand they can't take a nap. You got to stay woke.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving.
You know,
and they crying and hollering. I want to take a nap. Like, come on, we got to keep moving.
You know, it's funny because those kids in preschool and in Head Start and all the programs they were in, that was part of their afternoon was at least 30 minutes of downtime where they kind of regrouped. And kindergarten now, curriculum wise, they don't stop now. You send those children home so mama will like you. You send them home tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, some of the Head Start kids do not like taking naps, so it makes it hard for you to do your planning and, you know, do your extra work that you have to do when they don't want to take a nap. That's hard.
Oh yeah. And you know, but you think about that I used to teach middle school, and I'm going to tell you, middle school, one of the things I think you always initially used to try to do, because most people who were teaching middle school when I taught middle school were people who were certified high school or certified elementary school, and they couldn't find a high school job or they couldn't find an elementary job. So they said, well, hey, why don't you go over here and teach middle school? You know, your elementary, you can teach 6th grade. Your high school, you can teach all the way down to 7th grade. So, you know, most middle school principals were not looking for middle school people. They were looking for people who had been elementary or high school, so they really didn't know a whole lot about middle school. But one of the things that was always kind of funny is that first 2 or 3 days, we used to try to scare the crap out of those kids. Scare them, terrify them, get them so they're scared of not turning their homework. You know? And the reason why I say that is because we thought that's what you did. You went in there hard, and then you eased up on them later. You know, you had to show them who was boss. Okay, that's what we thought. Now, in all honesty, we probably, if we had sat down and taught middle school like grown-up elementary school and not baby high school, we probably would have done a better job with them. You know, because middle school is that crazy time where, you know, puberty hits and things just aren't going right. But from a leadership standpoint, you know, for example, one of the things I love about elementary school is, what is the one thing when you go in every single elementary school class, on the wall, by the door, not the rules, but what's the one thing that's put up there and it's changed every week?
The helpers thing.
Right, the classroom jobs. The classroom jobs. I wish today that every teacher from pre-K to the 12th grade would put up a classroom helpers list, and they give jobs out every week, because it helps promote leadership skills. You know, I love to go in an elementary school class. As a matter of fact, I'm so happy I got 3 student teachers, and 2 of them are kindergarten teachers. I'm excited this fall. I am excited because I love to go in there when they do morning meeting. Morning meeting is so much fun because you got the kid who gets up and he's the weather person.
Yeah.
You got the person who goes through the calendar.
Yeah.
I mean, they have jobs that are specific, and those kids take them seriously. If you don't believe they take them seriously, they take them seriously because they think school won't start and go right if they don't do those jobs right.
That's right.
They are serious about that stuff. And I'm serious. You want to promote leadership? Build leaders on the first day of school in your classrooms. I'm telling you, build leaders. Start off, and you don't know who can do what on the first day of school. So it's kind of a leap of faith that first week or so. But find leaders in your classroom that first week and assign tasks for them to do. If you're middle school or high school, you may do them for a little bit longer than a week. You know, elementary school usually can hang about a week, but middle school and high school might be able to go a little bit longer. But assign those leadership roles and help them develop those skills, because when you teach those kids to develop those skills in your classroom, I'm going to tell you something. One of the things you'll find is the engagement goes up in a big way, and they'll want to tell you what they're doing. They won't be trying to hide it from you. They'll want to tell you. I mean, and I'll tell you something too right now from a leadership standpoint. Remember the story I used last week from the Last Supper?
Mm-hmm.
Just try sitting on the floor with them one time. I mean, even with your middle school kids, have them just all crowd up and get in the floor, in the middle of the floor, and do your morning meeting the first day of school. I'm going to tell you something. It will blow your mind, because those kids will be so excited about getting to sit down close up and talk, because they haven't been able to do that. When they got to middle school, they were told they'd never get to do that anymore. Try it. I'm serious. It will blow your mind. I mean, I'm serious. What you do the first week of school, you better do it well, because it's got to last 35 more. And like I said, we don't know what it's going to look like. I'm telling you, I don't know about y'all, but I have been praying for a cure since March, because I want to see these kids go back to school all day, every day. And I know it's not safe for them to do it right now. Okay. So that being said, I want to see it happen, but build that leadership capacity with them now. Even if you have to do it digitally, they'll still chime in and give you the weather. They'll still chime in and do the calendar stuff with you. Matter of fact, if I'm in middle school or high school, I might have a class reporter who on Monday goes down everything that's due for the week and when it's due. Stuff like that, where they have to keep their classmates informed. It's really important. But those 3 areas, autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire, most of us fit in to at least 1 or 2 of those areas. Sometimes we fit into all 3 of them in different places. Let me ask you a question. How do you classify yourself real quick? Let's talk about how we classify ourselves real quick. Anybody in here autocratic?
At times.
Okay, those of you with children, how about bedtime? You will go to bed. I've had all of you I can take.
Yes. Yes.
Don't come out of your room till tomorrow morning. I don't care if you have to go to the bathroom. Okay, we've been autocratic. How many of you have found yourself in a democratic situation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we've all found ourselves that way because sometimes getting input's important. Sometimes now granted, sometimes it kind of falls into what we call let's make a deal, and that situation as it falls in sometimes is not necessarily positive, but we've all been there. And how many of you guys have found yourself in the situation where you're laissez-faire, kind of, oh well, whatever.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just don't kill.
Yeah.
Just don't kill your brother, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do. Just don't kill your brother. We got Band-Aids. It's all right. Well,
Sometimes you got to pick and choose your battle.
Yes.
very much
Yes.
so. But from a leadership standpoint, good leaders know themselves well enough and know what their leadership style is. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about real quick for about 2 minutes, and then we're going to be done. I'm going to talk to you 2 minutes about the one type of leadership that is really kind of taken over things. And you've seen these people in schools. 2 theorists, Burns and Bass, and they are real big on developing what they call transformational leadership. Okay? Transformational leadership. This is an entirely different concept. In other words, anybody, Rhett, I know you're a coach. Anybody in here a coach? I know we have a music teacher in here, Lillian, you're a music teacher. Any band directors? Any choral directors? Okay. Transformational leadership is real easy to think about. How many of you ever saw the movie The Karate Kid? I don't care if you saw the one with Will Smith's son or whether you saw the old one with Ralph Macchio in it. I mean, let me point something out about transformational leadership, thinking about movies. I talk about movies a lot because movies are the common language that we all know. Okay? We know movies better than we know religion. We know movies better than we know literature, history, politics, you name it, because we all have gone to the movies. As Americans, we go to the movies. Matter of fact, I'll bet since the pandemic struck, y'all have watched at least 2 movies a week, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I bet y'all just about burned the buttons off Netflix, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
On your remote.
Yes. Yes.
I know. I have too. Matter of fact, last night I watched The Firm. I hadn't seen The Firm in 20 years, and I watched The Firm. And I was sitting there thinking about. Actually, I was thinking about how it related to leadership. Anyway, but all things considered, a transformational leader is a leader that pushes people to be better than they normally are. Okay, think about transformational leaders you have seen in the past, probably in the past 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go across the long list. Dr. Martin Luther King, Shirley Chisholm, Coach Pat Riley used to coach the Lakers. John Wooden used to coach UCLA's basketball team. John Wooden used to spend 45 minutes, the very first practice of every season, sitting down in the middle of the gym with his players, teaching them how to lace their basketball shoes. Everybody back then wore those the canvas Chuck Taylor high tops.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a reason why. There was a method to the madness. They thought it was just anal retentive, but there was a method to the madness. And it was very simple. The method was that if you have taken the time to do the little things, then in the fourth quarter, you're not going to have blisters all over your toes. You're going to still be able to run up and down the court as fast as you were at the beginning of the game. 45 minutes. And he sat there and demonstrated how to lace basketball shoes. And I mean, I'll give you, probably his all-time greatest player who ever played for him was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And that was one of the things that every one of those players that he ever talked to, that you ever interviewed or heard in an interview, the first thing they talk about is John Wooden showing them how to lace their basketball shoes. Okay. That's some serious stuff. You go down the list, there are other people that come up almost immediately who are just good leaders. I mean, when you go down the list, you look at presidents, you look at entertainers. It's kind of interesting when you think about some of the entertainers we've had who've taken major stands on major issues in America and helped people change their minds. I remember when I was in high school, there was a little kid in Ohio named Ryan White. That name sound familiar to anybody? Ryan White was the
It's on
first.
Netflix.
Yeah, I seen that
Yeah.
story.
Netflix. Yeah.
Ryan White was the first kid to be kicked out of school for having AIDS,
AIDS, yeah, I seen
and
that
he
story.
got it from a blood transfusion. And oddly enough, Elton John kind of championed his cause. Singer, piano player, he
Mhm.
kind of championed his cause. And it's kind of funny now, ironic, that Elton John was not even an American citizen, but he championed this kid's cause. And the law was changed to prevent kids from not being denied a public education. The Americans with Disability Act and the Individuals with Disability Education Act, they were changed to allow children who were HIV positive or to even have AIDS to be able to go to school because they were scared. You guys remember, I don't know if y'all remember in the early days of AIDS, man, if you got AIDS, they locked you away in a box somewhere and you stayed there till you died. And that was it's kind of like lepers in the Bible. You went off somewhere and died. Well, the reason why I say that is that there are a lot of leaders who show leadership in ways they don't plan to. And a transformational leader can push people to do something much further than they would ever been able to do. Transformational leaders, the reason why they're so good is that they're concerned about the individual. Can I help the individual be better? They want to stimulate you intellectually, okay? They want, if you work for a school principal or an assistant principal, or you have a grade chair, or you have a teammate who is a transformational leader, they're going to push you to read stuff. They're going to push you to keep your skills up and to move forward. They're going to be people who are leaders in the educational environment, whether they hold a title or not. And transformational leaders can inspire people inspirationally. They motivate you. They they're the kind of people who can talk to you and make you believe you could run through a brick wall. Those are the kind of people who make things happen, those transformational leaders. And I've seen, I'm going to give you a prime. How many of y'all work in Duplin County? Anybody work in Duplin County? Does anybody teach in Duplin County? Duplin County had a superintendent a few years ago that was just, the guy, I'm sorry, Jones County. I got the wrong county. Guy named Dr. Mabenga. And Dr. Mabenga is now, he's now in Durham County.
Yeah.
But Jones County, give you an idea of when he came there, Jones County was a county that was at risk. It was in bad shape academically. And this guy he just refused to believe that this little rural county could not get better. He refused to believe that. And everybody who ever worked for him, that's the first thing he says this guy could make you believe that you could run through a brick wall, and you could run through a brick wall because he made you believe you could. The guy was very intelligent, and he knew how to get the best out of people. Okay. And that brings us to the fourth part of transformational leadership, and it's what we call idealized influence. They know how to, insert themselves in places to make the most positive change, okay? idealize. They're not just, it's not like a big shotgun blast. They know where to zero right in and go to that point to make the most improvement that can be made. Okay. And that's the reason why I want you to think about these. I'm going to send these out to you tonight. Okay. Because you're going to see them come over and over again. Now, I want to go ahead and point out something while I'm thinking about it. Week 5 and week 6, people had questions about who's who and about the innovation plan. They're not due till week 5 and week 6, okay? You got 2 weeks on the who's who and 3 weeks on the innovation plan, okay? So everybody just relax. You're going to be okay. The reason why I put them early on is so that you had time to maybe start thinking about them and working on them. Who's who, I'm going to tell you, the easy way to understand who's who is this. I want you to be able to pick out what these people did. And you can list it. You can just bullet. What are their highlights? What were they known for? Okay, and the reason why I say that is this. You have to know something about the people who were instrumental in building our American education system so that you know how to, how to apply that information to help your students. I mean, particularly in the 20th century, we had a lot of theories that came up. We had a lot of change in how we did school. I'm going to close with a little story. My grandmother, she passed away in 2001, but she was a school teacher in Sampson and Harnett County. And she had been a principal during the Second World War. It's kind of interesting. Her principal went off to the Second World War. She was the acting principal at the school where she was. And when he came back from the Navy when the war was over, she had to go back to the classroom. She didn't get to keep the job. And they didn't give her another principal's job because back then they didn't have to do that, which kind of stinks because, now you wouldn't dare do that because persons earn the right to have the job. They need to have the job. Well, anyway, long story short, in the mid 50s, we had a little thing happen in 1957 that kind of set America on its ear. The Russians shot a little satellite up into the outer space called Sputnik. And we were scared that the Russians were going to watch us. Okay. So the federal government put a bunch of money into something that we call the ESEA. We also know it as Title I. Anybody familiar with Title I in your school? Okay. ESEA Title I, federal money. We're gonna catch the Russians. That's the only reason why I was there. To catch Russians and beat them. We got to beat them to outer space. We got to beat them to the moon. Well, anyway, so they started sending all these teachers to summer school workshops. They would round you up, and they would send you. You might get sent to UNCG. If you're in the western part of the state, they might send you out to Appalachian, or because Appalachian was just a teachers' college back then. Might send you to Western Carolina College, or they might send you to, if you were in the eastern part of the state, they might send you to East Carolina. And they'd put you in the dorm for 2 weeks, and they'd teach you how to use all this great technology. And it was going to innovate and make your classroom better. Do y'all know what the technology was? Y'all ready for this? Dun, 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 dun. Okay, never mind. Anyway, technology was overhead projectors, film strip projectors, 16 millimeter movie projectors, and flannel felt boards. The ones you used to stick the pictures on?
Yeah.
That was the technology that they were being trained on. They're going to beat the Russians to outer space with that stuff. And I remember my grandma used to talk about, oh, it was wonderful. They took us to East Carolina for 2 weeks and taught us how to do lessons on this stuff. And of course, she passed away right after I became an administrator. And I used to get in the car, my wife and I get in the car, and we drive home, and we just be laughing. Technology, huh? But for the time, it was technology. Matter of fact, they even taught them how to use this thing called a reel-to-reel cassette recorder. They had never recorded people at school, and things like this. Particularly in rural eastern North Carolina, they'd never done that kind of thing. So anyway, but the reason why I say that is that when you're looking at how things have changed and you look at people who make the changes happen, transformational leaders, and if you're lucky, you'll end up with at least one in the school you're working in. They will make it so exciting to come to school. You won't want to be sick. You'll go to work sick because you just want to see what's going to happen. Okay? I'm just telling you, it happens that way. But let me just say this in closing before we close for the night. Sunday night, your reflections on your school district data. You go in it the same way you did for the working and learning conditions survey and look at the district, okay? And look at 2018 because 2020 or 2020 won't be done. But look at 2018 and what do you see that points out below 70% that might be something that would need to be addressed? You know, these are the things I want you to look for and get used to looking for, okay? All right. Now, I let y'all go too long tonight, so like I said, I'm gonna send you out an email with the information on it, and then we're going to and then I'm also going to send you the video. Okay, if you need me, my phone is on. It'll be on all weekend. I do need to tell you this before I forget that probably the 6th of August we probably will not meet that night on Zoom. Okay. All right. And this is my little redhead. This is my 7-year-old. This is Avery. Avery, this is Daddy's class.
Hi.
Want to say hi? Okay. All right. You all have a good night and take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.